Growth and Development, Part 4, Abraham Maslow's Humanistic Theory, and B.F. Skinner's Behavioral Theory. We'll start first with Maslow's Humanistic Theory. Abraham Maslow was born in Brooklyn, New York, and was the oldest of 7 children. His parents were uneducated Jewish immigrants that were wanting a better life for their children, so they encouraged education. Maslow became an American professor of psychology. Now, early in his years, or in his career, while working with monkeys, he noticed that certain needs took precedence over others, such as thirst before hunger. It's noted to be a stronger need. A person can live for a few days or a few weeks without food, however, only a few days without water. You can't live as long without water. There are certain needs that you will die if you don't have. Others you need and are basic, however, you can live without. So he developed his humanistic theory of self-actualization, or the hierarchy of needs. Maslow arranged his requirements for survival and growth into different levels. He also arranged it according to the ability to motivate an individual. For example, the physiological needs are on the bottom level. These are the ones that you must have: breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, and excretion. Now, we're going to be going through every one of these, but as you can see, self-actualization is at the top. So the person must start at the bottom level, and once they acquire these needs or meet these needs, then they can move up the hierarchy. The first level are your physiological needs. This is the need for breathing or air or oxygen. You can't live without that. The need for food, the need for nutrients, the need for water, the need for shelter, clothing, sleep, exercise, elimination, and sexual expression. Once these needs are met, then the individual can move up the hierarchy to the second level, which is safety and security. An individual needs a safe environment. They need physical safety. They need security and predictability in the world. They need good health. They need financial stability, family and social stability, and comfort. If an individual is having a lot of pain, he's going to try to spend his time relieving that pain or finding ways to relieve that pain and not be working on self-esteem or self-actualization. The next level is love and belonging. This is the third level, and if the other 2 levels are met, most of the needs in those 2 levels, the individual will go to this level. This is where an individual has needs for giving and receiving of affection. They may seek out a mate, a partner, start a family. They may be part of a community, a group, a church. College students will often join fraternities or sorority in college, and many individuals seek to belong and find meaning in a career. They have many friends in their career. The next level is the need for self-esteem. Now, Maslow noted 2 versions of esteem needs, the lower need and the higher need. With the lower, the individual seeks the respect of others, the need for status, fame, glory, recognition, reputation, dignity, and appreciation. Now, the higher levels are the need for self-respect, confidence, and competency. Opposite of these are low self-esteem and inferiority complexes. We all know that many psychological or mental health issues have a root cause of low self-esteem. Now, up until now, all these levels have been called deficit needs or D needs. And what this means is that if you have met these needs, you feel nothing at all. You're not lacking anything, but you really don't think about that you're meeting them. They're just there, or they're being met. For example, you're not going to miss water until your well runs dry. You're not going to miss or go hungry until, or know that you need food until you don't have the money to buy food. We oftentimes take these basic needs being met for granted. Now, many times if you've gone without as a child, an individual will have problems in the future or in the present, fearing that they will go hungry again. So they feel like they will never have enough food, or they'll never have enough money. Or if they've been homeless before, they're afraid they're going to lose the home they're living in now. So oftentimes, to these individuals, enough is never enough. Now, self-actualization is the highest level. It's the 5th level. And it's considered the growth motivation of being needs, B-E-I-N-G, or B needs, and self-actualization. These needs do not necessarily require balance or homeostasis. However, once the individual has obtained some of these needs, he or she tends to be aware of them and tend to become stronger as these needs are worked upon or fed. So remember, when we talked earlier about the D needs or the deficit needs, you don't really realize that you're lacking something until you're lacking it. Or you don't really realize that you have something until you go without. Now, with these needs, once you have them, that individual realizes that he or she has them. Now, Maslow noticed that there are certain characteristics of the person who is self-actualized. Abraham Lincoln was one person that he felt had reached self-actualization. Einstein, Thomas Jefferson, Eleanor Roosevelt. These are only a few. Some of the characteristics would be the individual has an appropriate perception of reality. They're able to accept their self and others. They're very spontaneous. They spend time concentrating on problem solving. They want to not just think about that problem, but find ways of solving. They don't mind being alone. They have a need for privacy. They're very independent and autonomous. Oftentimes, they have peak experiences that validates the beauty of life. They can see just how valuable life is and how precious life is. They will have satisfactory interpersonal relationships, although they may not have a lot of close friends. The ones that they do have, they're very committed to, and they have very satisfactory interpersonal relationships with them. They are very creative. They're non-conforming, and they are very ethical. So these are some of the characteristics of individuals that have reached self-actualization. Creativity, the feeling of self-fulfillment, the desire to be all that they can be. Now, with the relevance to mental health nursing, unmet basic needs often lead to problems in functioning and may result in mental health disorders. And we all know that a lack of self-esteem is often noted with patients or clients who have mental or suffer from mental illness. Now, whenever we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, with a psychiatric patient, we have to focus on those unmet physiological needs before we can focus on higher levels. For example, if a patient is not eating well, we want to make sure that they are getting those needs met for nutrition before we're going to try to work on those needs of self-esteem or comfort. We also want to make sure that that patient remains safe. Okay? We want to keep the patient safe. We're not going to be working on self-actualization. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is very relevant to the mental health setting along with other settings in nursing, such as the acute setting in the hospital, home health, or long-term facilities. The next theorist we're going to talk about is B.F. Skinner. He has a behavioral theory. He was born in 1904 and died in 1990. He was an American psychologist and a radical behaviorist and developed the theory of operant conditioning, which means its behavior is influenced by consequences, whether they're positive or negative. His theory was influenced by Thorndike's law of effect, where there is a connection between a stimulus and a response. Now, the response is going to be weakened or strengthened by the consequences of the response. Operant conditioning, behavior is determined by consequences. And in this case, we're talking about positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, aversive stimulus, and discriminative stimuli. We'll be talking about that. Now, environmental events that interact with and influence a patient's behavior are called stimuli. Stimuli may precede, become before a behavior, or they may follow a behavior. Now, if a stimulus follows a behavior, and the behavior is also called a response, then this stimulus that follows the behavior is called a reinforcer. The function itself is reinforcement, and it results, or if it results in behavior reoccurring, it's called a positive reinforcer. So this function is positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement increases the chance that a behavior will reoccur by removal of an undesirable reinforcing stimulus, and we're going to be going over all of these. Now, a stimulus that follows a behavioral response and decreases the probability that the behavior will reoccur is called an aversion or aversive stimulus, or is a punishment. Stimuli that precede a behavioral response and predict that a particular reinforcement will occur are called discriminative stimuli, and they are under the control of the individual. We're going to be talking about each one of these individually, but Skinner believed that reinforcement processes are primary in the shaping of the behavior. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is positive reinforcement. This is where there is increased probability that the behavior will reoccur. For example, the book tells you on page 281 of Townsend that a child has a messy room. Okay? So the behavioral response is that the child cleans the room. Now, the reinforcing stimulus is that the child gets an allowance for cleaning the room. So this is positive reinforcement. It can also include grades. Child makes good grades, they get praise, they get recognition, they get monetary rewards. So that's going to increase the chances that they'll continue getting good grades. Negative reinforcement. This is not punishment. Okay? This increases desired behavior through withholding of rewards. Now, your book talks about negative reinforcement in the messy room. The child cleans her messy room. So what happens? She doesn't get positive reinforcement of a monetary rewards or praise, but she gets negative reinforcement, meaning that she does not get a spanking or she does not get scolded because she cleaned her room or he cleaned his room. So that is negative reinforcement. All right. The next example would be your aversive stimulus. Now this is punishment. This decreases the undesired behavior through aversive stimuli such as punishment. Okay? The child has a messy room. The child does not clean her messy room. So she is punished. She is scolded by her mother. All right? So this is going to increase the chance that the child leaves a messy room. Okay? So they're going to clean the room because they do not want to get a spanking. So aversive behavior decreases undesired behavior. The undesired behavior here is not cleaning the room. It's leaving a messy room through aversive stimuli. Could be corporal punishment, timeout, spankings. Now I look at this little child. It's kind of comical to me with a soap in the mouth. And I think about that movie that a lot of us watch at Christmas time called A Christmas Story. Little boy says some bad words, so Mama washes out his mouth with soap, right? That was his punishment. However, today, in today's society, many of us would call this child abuse. And DCF would probably be called in on a case like that. Now, whether or not you agree with that is personal, but this would be aversive stimulus. Now, discriminative stimuli, an individual is able to discriminate between stimuli and choose according to the type of reinforcement associated with a specific stimulus. The book gives an example here of a patient, and the patient is in the hospital, and she has different nurses. Let's say there's nurse A and there's nurse B. Nurse A will come when the call light's rung. The patient rings the call light. Nurse A just comes in and tends to the request or the basic needs. She doesn't do anything extra. However, Nurse B comes in and she talks with the patient, takes care of the request, takes care of the basic need, and maybe she sits down and reads to the patient. Maybe a poem. Maybe she spends time with the patient. The patient may be lonely. Now, the patient realizes that she has a choice of which nurse she requests. So this is discriminative stimuli. She is going to request nurse B if she's lonely. If she wants company, she's going to request that nurse. Now, how does Skinner's behavioral theory, what is the relevance of this to mental health nursing? Well, Townsend describes behavior therapy as a form of psychotherapy, the goal of which is to modify maladaptive behavior patterns by reinforcing more adaptive behaviors. The mental health nurse can assist the client in setting goals for his or herself. The nurse can also assist the client in modifying the client's behavior by helping the patient or the client adopt more positive, acceptable behaviors, or avoiding unaccepted or maladaptive behaviors. For example, the patient may receive praise or rewards for positively changed behavior, or if the patient or client behaves in an unacceptable manner, they may lose part of their privileges, or they may have to go to a timeout for a while. So limit setting is important in the psychiatric field or the psychiatric setting, with a loss of rewards when the patient acts out or behaves inappropriately. This is the end of Growth and Development, Part 4.